Hello everyone, and welcome to the moment you've all been waiting for. It's Jose Raul Capablanca versus Emmanuel Lasker, the negotiations. It's gonna take up quite a bit of your time, so I do hope you have your popcorn ready and that you are prepared to get into this, as it's really complicated and insane, like I mentioned in my previous video. And sorry about the sound of the moves was off in the previous video, but I have no idea what's the reason behind this. So I hope it will improve until my next video. Now, going into the negotiations, like we mentioned, first Capablanca in this saga has defeated Juan Corso, champion of Cuba. Then he defeated with an outstanding result Frank James Marshall, one of the top, considered to be one of the top 10 players in the world, with a result of 8 wins and only 1 loss. Then Capablanca went to his first big international tournament of San Sebastian in 1911, and he defeated it half a point ahead of Dr. Milan Vidmar and Akiba Rubinstein, even though he did lose that one game to Akiba Rubinstein, but in the end Capablanca prevailed. And all of this culminated in Capablanca's boosting confidence to challenge Dr. Emmanuel Lasker for the title. And often Capablanca's friends or family, or even the newspapers, the public, the general public, would ask Capablanca prior to the 1911 tournament of San Sebastian, would he challenge Dr. Lasker for the title? And he said that he would still not cross swords with the champion, as he still does not consider himself ready. But like I said, this seems like a fair boosting confidence, and Capablanca has offered a challenge to Dr. Lasker. But before we get into that, first we need to understand that in those days, for example, in 1911, there was no chess organization like FIDE exists today. There was no governing body that would organize events like the World Chess Championship. And so the players pretty much did it between themselves. Capablanca would issue a challenge to Dr. Lasker. Lasker would reply, offer terms, and if the terms were agreed upon, the match would happen. But it wasn't always so smooth. For example, you all know that when Paul Morphy was considered the strongest player in the world, he won the first American Chess Congress, which was attended by pretty much every strongest chess player in the world, aside from Howard Staunton and Adolf Anderssen. But then Morphy traveled and met Dr. Adolf Anderssen, and he defeated Adolf Anderssen with a very nice result. He did not play Howard Staunton, but Staunton was ill, I guess, or so he said, but still pretty much everyone in the world considered Paul Morphy to be the world champion, as often you will hear that Paul Morphy is the first unofficial world chess champion. But then after things started moving, Morphy retired from chess. Then Johannes Zukertort defeated Adolf Anderssen, and then he was supposed to play against Wilhelm Steinitz for the title of first official world champion. Even though there was like I said, no official body that would present Wilhelm Steinitz with such a title, would he win this match. And if you remember, Steinitz said that if Morphy was to unretire from chess, that he would much rather play Morphy for the title than Johannes Zukertort. But Morphy wasn't interested, so Steinitz beat Zukertort, and Steinitz became the first official world champion. Even though when we say official, there still was no badge on Steinitz or any, how to put, any document that said that Steinitz was the official world champion. Much like today, Magnus Carlsen is the FIDE world champion. But if some of you, I don't know, created a second organization for chess, like Kasparov did his Professional Chess Association, then Magnus Carlsen would still be the FIDE world chess champion, but someone who won a tournament in your organization would be your world champion. Such was the case. So, like I said, Steinitz was the champion in the minds of people and in the opinions of the general public. And when Lasker defeated Wilhelm Steinitz, then Lasker became world champion, but he didn't receive any official document stating that Dr. Lasker was now world champion. And so, when Capablanca issued the challenge, Capablanca first selected, we could say, a legal representative. It was Frederick D. Rosebolt, a gentleman we don't know much about. I have found on chesshistory.com an article by Edward Winter. You can find it. It will be the first thing in the description below, so you can read something more about him. He was also Capablanca's business associate, and he was the one that presented Dr. Lasker with a letter with the challenge from Jose Raul Capablanca. Dr. Lasker received it on 4th of November in the art room of the Brooklyn Institute of Arts and Sciences, and he replied to Capablanca that he generally accepts the challenge, but he cannot so hastily grant him the terms of such an event, so he will have to wait for Lasker's reply. And some 2 weeks have passed, and Lasker has presented the terms of the World Chess Championship match between Lasker and Capablanca. And here are the terms. I present them to you via the book about Capablanca by Edward Winter. These are the terms. As you can see, there are 17 of them, and we are going to go through all of them, as it's quite important for you to really grasp the magnitude of this match. So, okay, let's go. We have, and they were issued in Evening Post column. So 1. The match to be 6 games up, draws not counting, but should neither of the contestants have scored 6 points after 30 games have been completed, the match to end it then. So, you either have to be up 6 points in a match to win it immediately, or if the match lasts for 30 games, then the match is over, and then if no one has achieved such a thing, then the match will be drawn. And in the second point, you see the first winner of 6 games to win the match, as we already said. If the match should extend to 30 games, he who has scored the majority of points to be the winner of the match, except when the score should be 1-0, 2-1, or 3-2. In these cases, as well as in case of equality of points, the match to be declared drawn. And this point was the biggest remark Capablanca had in regards to Lasker's terms about the match. It basically means that Capablanca has to win by a margin larger than 1 point. So if the result is Capablanca wins 1 game and the other 29 games are drawn, Lasker, keeps his title. Also, if the result is Capablanca wins 2 games, Lasker wins 1, and the other 27 games are drawn, Lasker still keeps his title. Also, here you see if it's 3-2, so Capablanca wins 3 games, Lasker wins 2 games, the other 25 games are drawn, then also Lasker keeps the title. Only if Capablanca, for example, wins 4 games, Lasker wins 3 games, it's still a 1-point margin, but in this case, Lasker says, okay, in this case, even if all the other games are drawn, you would win the title. And Capablanca did not enjoy this. Capablanca answered Lasker also via a public letter. Then it was not on these terms that Lasker won the title from Steinitz, and it was not on these terms that Lasker has, at least for what we know, has defended his title so far. So, in Capablanca's opinion, if Capablanca wins the match by a 1-point margin, he is the champion. Because, okay, in other sports, if you win by a 1-point margin, you're still the winner. It would be, Capablanca says that it would be unfair to claim that, okay, Capablanca won the match, but only by a 1-point margin, so even though he's the better player, Lasker is still world champion. Doesn't really make much sense. But Lasker then again replied in a letter saying that it would be a shame that, for example, Lasker loses the first game and then Capablanca forcefully draws the other 29 games. So it's Lasker says that it's kind of a assurance that the games will be interesting, not only for them but also for the viewers, and it would be bad for chess if such a rule was to be allowed. But it's he's the title holder, so of course he wants Capablanca has to have at least a 2-point margin, and Capablanca wants a fair fight. I mean, it's like that. It's when you don't have a governing body and let 2 people brawl it out. Then we have the point 3. The winner of the match to be declared chess champion of the world and to receive the total stakes. In case of a drawn issue, Dr. Lasker retains the title of champion and the stakes are returned to the backers. Capablanca answered that in his letter that he has nothing, no remarks about this point. If the first 2 points are fixed and Capablanca only needs 1 win to actually, a win by a 1-point margin to win the match. Then we go into 4. As you can see in 4, the games of the match are the property of Dr. Lasker, who is at liberty to charge for the viewing of them and for their publication in any form may he deem to his advantage. So basically it means that if even if Capablanca wins the match and he becomes world champion, the games, the moves of the games, the PGNs, we could say, are the property of Emanuel Lasker, and he can charge for them as much as he likes. So even if Capablanca were to write a book and he would like to present the games that he played against Lasker in that book, he would have to pay Lasker for such a privilege, as the games would be property of Dr. Emanuel Lasker. Also, Capablanca had remarks about this. He said that to create a game, you need two players, so it's not Lasker's game, it's a creation of two people, so Lasker cannot have the sole privilege of charging money for viewership and for publication. But on the other hand, then Lasker replied to Capablanca that it's Lasker who is the world champion. He has been the world champion for over 20 years now, and that people are interested in his games, and that he doesn't need Capablanca to spark the public's interest. He could play against any opponent, and people would still be very much interested because it's Emanuel Lasker that's playing. And okay, we have, as you can see, 6. Dr. Lasker has the right to determine the beginning of the match and the locality of play. He shall, however, give Mr. Capablanca at least 4 weeks' notice of the time set for the beginning, and at least 2 weeks' notice for any change of locality. Capablanca says that, okay, generally that's fine, but he says that 4 weeks is much too a little of a time in advance. He says that okay, this is now maybe going a bit too far, but if Lasker said, okay, we're going to play in Australia, then I guess 4 weeks is not enough notice for Capablanca. So Capablanca is just making sure that none of these points are to his complete disadvantage. So Capablanca says that he will accept if Lasker would notify him 3 months in advance, and okay, about changing venues 1 month in advance. And Lasker said that, again, in a letter that he replies, that he does not agree to these terms, that if such an occasion would happen where Capablanca would really have to travel really far, that more time would be allowed. But Capablanca really wants everything to be clear, and Lasker does it with honor, it would seem. He's the world champion. He wouldn't do anything to compromise the quality of the match. Mr. Capablanca to deposit $2,000 with the stakeholder as a guarantee that he will deposit the stakes at the appointed time. The guarantee to be wholly forfeited to Dr. Lasker if Mr. Capablanca, after promising to deposit his share of the stakes at the appointed time, does not do so. Capablanca also says that this is a bit too much, because when Lasker played against Wilhelm Steinitz, he didn't have to deposit $2,000 as a safeguard, but rather $250. And Steinitz also deposited the same. So Capablanca says, okay, Lasker knows Capablanca can raise more money than any other challenger. But still, if Capablanca is to raise $2,000, then Lasker also has to put up $2,000, like Steinitz had to put up $250 in their match. And okay, number 8, we have, should Dr. Lasker not deposit the stakes agreed upon, or should he fail to name the locality of the match within a year from present date, Mr. Capablanca is to be declared the chess champion of the world, and the stakes deposited shall be returned to the backers. Capablanca says that this number 8 is pointless, as Capablanca does not wish to be named the champion of the world without a fair fight, as the public would not consider him world champion. He would be just someone unworthy of the title. As you all know, a similar thing happened to Anatoly Karpov when he won the title without facing Bobby Fischer, and he had to prove himself for years and years to come. Okay, people knew that he was strong, but still, everyone was always, but is he stronger than Fischer? So Capablanca has the right idea here. You have to beat the champion to become champion. Number 9, the time limit shall be 12 moves an hour. And this is also one of the points that Capablanca really hated. Capablanca said that this is not the time control that you used to defeat Wilhelm Steinitz. You played Wilhelm Steinitz at 15 moves an hour. So by playing at 12 moves an hour, it's a much slower time control. And he said that you also, when you negotiated with Janowski and also when you negotiated with Frank James Marshall, it was also 15 moves per hour, so not 12. And Capablanca says it's unfair because Lasker is world champion at 15 moves per hour at that time control, not at 12 moves per hour. And it would be unfair if Lasker could choose different time controls when he faces different opponents. It would be like Magnus Carlsen would now say to Caruana in their match, I don't think we'll be playing classical, we'll immediately play blitz, and may the best man win. not really something you'd want to do. But on the other hand, there are players that I'm sure Carlsen wouldn't mind playing classical games at all. Definitely Capablanca said that that's out of the question. But in a re-reply to that point, Lasker said that 12 moves per hour would create much better games, because at 15 moves per hour, players would suffer under time pressure and the quality of the games would be much lower. But we also need to look at number 9 and number 10 to really understand this, because at number 9, Lasker says that the time limit shall be 12 moves an hour, and then the play to proceed no oftener than 5 days per week, each play day to consist of 2 sections of 2 hours and a half each, one in the afternoon and one at night. And Capablanca says that this is if number 9 and number 10 would be agreed upon, then you would basically have a really slow game if you would play 12 moves an hour, and if a session would be only 2.5 hours before rest and then 2.5 hours in the evening, that you would basically reach 18 moves, 17, 18 moves in the first part of the game. Then you would go rest, just chill, and basically it would not be a contest between two players, a champion and a challenger. It would be an analytical contest, because during the first 17 moves of the game, you would barely reach any position that was not previously known. So you would still be in the opening. And after the position is reached, then Lasker would have a lot of time during his break and before continuation of the game in the evening to analyze the game, and then it will be much harder to do so. Capablanca suggests that we should play 15 moves per hour, and that sessions should last 6 hours. So no breaks before a session of 6 hours. There you would have, so at least 90 moves would be played. Basically, an entire game can be played during this time. But, it's, again, you don't have a governing body to move these negotiations forward. You have Lasker, who is much older, and Capablanca, who is 23 years of age at this moment. Pretty much the same as Lasker was when he played Steinitz for the title. But okay, we're gonna get back to this. 2 umpires to be named, one for the United States, the other one for Europe. In case of need, an umpire residing in South America or in Cuba to be named also. If any dispute arises between the contestants, the nearest one of these umpires is to be appealed to in writing. He who protests to forward a copy of his claim to the defendant, who shall put in his defense in writing, forwarding a copy of it to the claimant. Capablanca says that he has nothing against this. The play shall be governed by a director of play, who shall be in possession of a code to be agreed upon. The game to be viewed by the seconds of the players, who shall be appealed to for evidence in all cases of dispute. The director of play to decide all disputes relating to the playing of the game and to the code. Again, Capablanca did not have anything against this. Since the stakes played for in the former matches were insufficient to compensate the players, the 2 principals agreed to raise the stakes to the higher level. Mr. Capablanca to wire Dr. Lasker the amount of his backing no later than 2 months from the date of this letter, and Dr. Lasker to determine the amount of the stakes no later than 2 months from the date of receipt of Mr. Capablanca's wire. Just a second. Capablanca says that he generally doesn't mind this, as he knows, Lasker knows that he's able to raise the money, as Capablanca can muster up a lot of backers, but that he should know upfront the amount that Capablanca has to accumulate. Because yes, when Lasker faced Steinitz, the quality of living was much lower, and the money raised was not enough for a World Chess Championship match. So here we can understand Lasker's idea. He wants to gain as the most out of this match as possible, but still Capablanca wants everything to be as detailed as possible. So if one of the contestants is unable to put in an appearance at the time appointed for play, for any reason whatsoever, the game shall begin at the appointed time. Nevertheless, as if the players were both present, and the time limit rule shall be applied also in the absence of one of the players. Here Capablanca says that, okay, I mean, it's pretty steep. I mean, if you break your leg, or I mean, if someone, let's say, stabs you with a knife, you should be excused from the game. But in Lasker's opinion, and in Lasker's words, Lasker says that the quality of a champion goes far beyond the chessboard, that he should also be careful of what he eats, how he lives, how he trains, in what shape does he keep his body, how he, where he goes, where he hangs out. And, pretty much everything describes a champion, not just the moves over the board. So Capablanca should really be mindful of what he's doing and, not catch a cold or don't go into bars and have a fight. And that's how Lasker rolls. But okay. If neither player puts in an appearance at the time appointed for play, the clocks of the players whose turn it is to move shall be put into motion by the director of play of the player whose turn it is to move shall, sorry, I'm reading the same row once again, be put into motion by the director of play or his substitute, and the game shall proceed. Capablanca says, okay, but at least 2 times during the match, one should be excused without any evidence of why he's excused. Or maybe it didn't say, maybe he needed to present some evidence, but I mean, okay, really, if someone stabs you, you're not supposed to lose the game. So I guess it makes sense. And number 17, a code to be agreed upon before the beginning of the match, all disputes concerning it while it is in the making to be decided by an umpire. Capablanca says that he has no problems with this. But as Lasker firmly stood his ground, he did not nudge on the points that Capablanca can win 1 game and draw the 29 other games, and that he will be world champion. Here he would not simply not go I don't know how to put it. He would not fold, and also he was not interested in playing at 15 moves per hour. So Lasker was firmly set on this. Capablanca needs to win by a 2-point margin, or in a case that he wins 4 games, Lasker 3, and okay, other 23 games can be drawn. In this case, Capablanca becomes champion, and we play at 12 moves per hour. Those were the most critical points of negotiations, and then Capablanca really went all out. And in Lasker's words, he offended Lasker in a public letter. Capablanca said that Lasker goes to a state of obvious unfairness, where he accepts the challenge, but then he hides himself in terms that are simply unacceptable by Capablanca or by any other challenger, and thus, in Capablanca's eyes, Lasker is no longer champion. That's how Capablanca puts it. Capablanca even published an article in his Cuban article where he says that where he put all of the champions or all of the players that hold the titles, and he put Lasker's end year of holding the title 1912. So basically, Capablanca said that Lasker is no longer world chess champion. But aside of Cuba, the rest of the world wasn't really interested in stripping Lasker of the title without a fair fight. So, like Capablanca had a legal representative, then we have the appearance of Walter Penn Shipley. We also talked about this man during Capablanca's match with Frank James Marshall. Walter Penn Shipley was known as an arbitrator between disputes and as a chief arbiter of matches, and a lot of people knew about him. And he wrote to both Lasker and Capablanca, saying to them that if they wish so, he would become arbiter of this negotiations, and but only if both Lasker and Capablanca agreed that Walter Penn Shipley, once he makes his decision, that decision is final and no disputes can be made, unless both Capablanca and Lasker agree on a term that would be changed. So far, none of that ever happened, and the Capablanca pretty much gave up on negotiations. Lasker said that negotiations also are over, and that Lasker is now interested in taking up negotiations with Rubinstein, because Rubinstein also issued a challenge to Dr. Emanuel Lasker. And Capablanca filed a formal protest to Walter Penn Shipley, saying that Lasker cannot go into negotiations with Rubinstein before their negotiations are finished. And then Lasker also wrote to Walter Penn Shipley, saying that is it his duty as a world champion to continue negotiations with Capablanca, even though they cannot come to terms. In the meanwhile, there was a congress in Cuba that they decided to organize the biggest chess tournament ever held. They would call up, similarly in like in the 1911 tournament of San Sebastian, where players were invited that have won big international tournaments or have won second places in 2 or 3 international tournaments. Similar would be the type of invitation that would be received in this 2-leg tournament. One leg of the tournament would be played in New York, the second part in Havana. And it would be considered that the winner of such a tournament would be proclaimed world chess champion. And Lasker replied to this, and he said that he is definitely interested in such an event, no problem. He doesn't have to play a match for the title of world chess champion, but he also had some terms. He said that it wouldn't be fair if such an event would be held in Cuba, Havana, at least one leg of the match, one leg of the tournament, because it's Capablanca's homeland. He would have home field advantage, and also Lasker requested $5,500 for him to even appear there, as it would be inconvenient for him to spend his own money on traveling and stay there, as he still is considered by himself and by the public world chess champion. But yeah, such a thing never happened because none of the players actually went to the tournament, and the entire idea of this tournament was abandoned. And the negotiations haven't continued between Lasker and Capablanca. There were talks of negotiation between Rubinstein and Lasker, and even Rubinstein and Lasker came to terms, and they agreed to a match. It was a similar agreement to this one. But a bit of a different. It was if someone would win 8 games during the 30 games, then that one would be proclaimed winner. It was not 6 games like in Capablanca's case, and it was also considered to be a 30-game match if no one managed to get the 8 wins. But then it wouldn't be a draw like in the case where Lasker negotiated with Capablanca, but rather they would continue playing until one player wins a game, but only up until 4 games. So basically, the match can only last for 34 games. First part of the match would be 30 games, and then the 4 games where if Rubinstein wins even 1 game, Rubinstein is the champion. But this is 1914 now, and well, you all know what that means. It will be the outbreak of World War I, so nothing will be going on in the chess world or much in any other world, aside from the war raging. But before that, some 3 months before the World War I outbreaks, we have again a meeting between Jose Raul Capablanca and Dr. Emanuel Lasker. They met in the 1914 tournament of St. Petersburg, considered to be one of the strongest tournaments ever held. Also, some of the players, very strong players from the 1911 San Sebastian tournament will be there, like Akiba Rubinstein, Dr. Milan Vidmar. Jose Raul Capablanca will also play in this tournament. Frank James Marshall will play, but also the tournament will feature Dr. Emanuel Lasker, and it will be truly a clash to enjoy. So that's basically it for the negotiations. No terms were agreed upon, but instead of that, we are going into the 1914 tournament of St. Petersburg, where it's really going to be, it's just going to be an awesome tournament. Then, unfortunately, we'll have to wait a bit for the World War I to end, and then we will enter renegotiations between Capablanca and Lasker. So, for those of you who have lasted up until this long and have enjoyed this entire negotiation saga, I congratulate you. Truly, you are an excellent subscriber, and I did prepare a reward for you. I knew that you thought that there would be no game shown, as there are no players on the left, but I did prepare a very short, a 10-move miniature by Capablanca that is unlike any miniature you've ever seen, because it's actually not a miniature, but you'll see what I mean. It's a game from 1908. It was played in the Manhattan Chess Club between Capablanca and Leonard Meyer. Capablanca played e4, and basically it's a Ruy Lopez without much else. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, and knight to f6. Morphy's defense is on the board. d4, we have knight captures on e4. This is still, even today, considered standard theory. d5 now, attacking the knight on c6, and now knight to e7. Capablanca captures on e5, and we have now b5, forcing the bishop to b3, bishop to b7, and now Capablanca plays d6, opening up a discovered attack here from the bishop to the f7 pawn. Capablanca's opponent recaptures with the knight, defends the f7 pawn, and Capablanca simply captures with the queen. Knight captures on d6, and it was in this position that Capablanca's opponent resigned the game. But what's funny about this position is that Capablanca's opponent didn't really have to resign here. It's not a position you should be resigning. Of course, if you capture the queen, yes, bishop captures on f7 is checkmate. But if you don't capture the queen, there is this knight d5 move, which traps Capablanca's queen. And here Capablanca wouldn't really have any option but to capture on d7. Give the piece back and enjoy the rest of the game. Queen captures, knight captures, king captures, and here, let's say, castles. The material is completely equal and the game continues. But Capablanca's opponent, when he saw queen captures on d6, he was like, oh my god, it's all over. And he resigned the game. So it's a really cool miniature which you can show to your friends, in a bar or in a library. But it's really not a miniature, so there you have it. But yeah. That's the short game, but these were the negotiations. I do hope you enjoyed that. It's only a small fraction of the negotiations. I really couldn't prepare everything as it's simply too vast. But if you're interested, do acquire a book by Edward de Winter. It's just called Capablanca, and it really features everything about him. From every other book that ever mentioned Capablanca, everything is there, and it's just a wonderful source of vast knowledge. So yeah, I would like to thank Marcio Tondin, Jonathan Tolan, Solid Systems, David Tenorio, and Oscar Cabrera for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon going into the 1914 tournament of St. Petersburg, where, all hell will break loose. Thank you all, and I'll see you soon.